one of the books that I've read in the past decade or so that has really made an impression on me is titled Almost Christian. Almost Christian by Kendra Creasy Dean. In this book, Dean offers up 3 marks of a highly devoted Christian. Mark 1, they belong to a community that enacts the God story. 2, they feel called by this story to to contribute to a larger purpose. And 3, they have hope for the future that is promised by this story. They belong, they feel called, they have hope. So let's begin with that first mark. They belong to a community that enacts the God story. So, not to be too simplistic this morning, but we are here today. So let's just check that one, pat ourselves on the back, and move to the second mark. 2, a highly devoted Christian feels called by this story to contribute to a larger purpose. All right, this sense of being called. We talk about call. We talk about being called a lot in church. But what is it exactly that we're talking about when we talk about call? For better or for worse, Matthew 4 has loomed large in my life when it comes to call stories. Jesus is walking along the Sea of Galilee, and he calls out to random fishermen, "Come and follow me." And they immediately leave everything and start following Jesus. As a kid, I heard this story a lot. I remember this story as a text that was preached on. I remember it as a skit. I remember it as an art project. I remember it as a puppet show. And I remember it as a lot of songs. A lot of songs. Well, how does that one go now? I can't remember. I will make you fishers of men, fishers of men, fishers of men. I will make you fishers of men if you follow me. You've heard that song too. So as I listened and watched and painted and sang this story, I always felt sad. I felt sad because I knew that I wanted to be a disciple. I wanted to be a follower of Jesus. But I could never imagine just leaving my parents and my bike and my dog and my record player and my Beach Boys and Neil Diamond albums all behind. Just like today, I just can't imagine just leaving my communities and my home and my retirement accounts. Leaving it all behind. And so I wondered, why hasn't anybody ever talked to me about Zebedee? Now, I respect and I admire Peter and James and John and other people who follow in that path. And I have some really good friends who have made those decisions to follow in that path. But it ends up being Zebedee who has a word for me. And Zebedee just might have a word for you as well. Turns out Zebedee is a pretty important guy. For one thing, he appears in all 4 Gospels. A remarkable thing when you consider that the Christmas story is only in 2. We know he was married, and he's so important we even know his wife's name, which is pretty incredible, Salome. And we know that he owned his own fishing company that had paid employees. So Jesus is walking and sees James and John and Zebedee, and he calls them, all 3 of them. James and John leave the boat to follow Jesus, and Zebedee stays in the boat to follow Jesus. In order to be the best disciple he can be, Zebedee stays in the boat of his life, and he uses his God-given desires and talents and abilities to run an ethical business. That's pretty important. Make sure other people have meaningful work. That's pretty important. Make sure people in his community and beyond have fish to purchase in the market so that they can feed their families. Pretty important stuff. Brothers and sisters, here is Zebedee's word for us. Following Jesus, living as a disciple, being in ministry. This all happens at the intersection where we are simultaneously aware of our own deep desires, our neighbors' deep desires and needs, and God's deep desires for this world. Are you a lawyer because God gave you the talent and the desire to use the law to make people's lives better? Look at you, following Jesus. Are you a teacher because God gave you the talent and the desire to help others learn and grow in order to be the best they can be? Look at you, living as a disciple. Are you a chef because God gave you the talent and desire to create food to make your community healthy and happy? Look at you, being a minister. Ministry happens when you are responsive to God's call on your life to be in life-giving relationships with and for your neighbor. Now, I want you to hear clearly what I am about to say, what all of this is leading up to. What all of this adds up to is you are a minister. You are a minister. You two are ministers. Here's the deal. Too often, the church can fall into the trap of believing and acting like only church professionals are ministers. That's not true. It's definitely not biblical. It's simply not true. To illustrate just how wrong that line of thinking is, let me use a Super Bowl analogy. Yes, LeAnn is using a sports analogy. All right, here's your question. Who would you say is more involved in this evening's game? Andy Reid, or Patrick Mahomes, or Travis Kelce? It's a trick question. It's impossible to answer, right? It's impossible to answer. Because Coach Reid is totally involved. Quarterback Mahomes is totally involved. Tight end Kelce is totally involved. They're all involved, but in different arenas. As in football, so in ministry. And I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. As in football, so in ministry. Because here's the deal, brothers and sisters. By virtue of your baptism, you are named and claimed beloved. And that's not just a nice thing. You are named and claimed beloved for a purpose. You are named and claimed beloved because your life has meaning. That purpose, that meaning, is nothing less than to make this world a better place. And you're a minister whose call is to make the world a better place everywhere you are. After the 9 o'clock service, I was talking with a group of young adults, and I didn't ask for permission, but I'll use her name anyway. Barbie Sullivan. So, you know, one of the Sullivan kids, she's recently graduated, she's got her first job, and she said, "You have totally blown my mind to think about what I do in HR benefits as ministry." She said, "I'm going back to work on Monday, totally different." You're a minister. You're a minister. Has God given you the ability and desire to rock babies at the hospital? That makes you a minister. Has God given you the ability and the desire to be an actuary at the principal? That makes you a minister. Has God given you the ability and the desire to serve on the board of deacons? That makes you a minister. Has God given you the desire and the ability to pray for family, friends in the world? That makes you a minister. Has God given you the desire and ability to coach your granddaughter's pee-wee soccer team? That makes you a minister. You are a minister in every realm of your life. It's not just in these walls. The third mark of a devoted Christian. You've got the first two down. Ready for the third one? They have hope. They have hope for the future that is promised by God's story. Beloved, a story that has Zebedee in it gives me tons of hope. Just imagine, just imagine if all of us, if every single one of you and me, if all of us, like Zebedee, owned our identity of follower, disciple, minister, right here, right now, exactly where you are in your boat of life. And really seriously lived out your faith in your home, in your workplace, in your school, in your church, in your communities. Imagine what a wonderful, wonderful world it would be. Last week, Pastor Rice ended her sermon with a question, and I will do the same. So my question's just kind of a riff on hers. What does Plymouth need to add or subtract or change in order to help Jesus make you, make me, make us better ministers everywhere we are out in the world? Amen.